Whatever the worship is, it does come down to, though, sacrificing. Blood sacrifice, it goes to blood sacrifice for the sake of power.
Yeah, I imagine because all this is, insane that this happens, but I imagine people that you've spoken to are maybe even the most hung up at the idea that satanic rituals occurring, like that being a legitimate form of wealthy display of power and sacrifice.
Of course. Yes, it's hard to understand. I mean, it's so extreme, so that in itself is for the perpetrators a great cover. The fact that it is so extreme makes it understandably so hard to believe. So in and of itself, they're like, yeah, no one's going to believe you. And that's true. But so the Belgians, they were not what I call religious. Um, the that prime minister or the minister of national defense, Van Boeinans in Belgium, he was just a huge sadist, and he loved the power, and he was not thinking he was a Satanist at all. He thought that was kind of stupid. But he set up the ritual for the American billionaire to please the global elitists in that network that are even more powerful than him, that he of course wanted to do business with. And they did do business together. And so what I saw in that billionaire was that he was, a real pedophile, and that he really got excited around little girls and the idea that they would listen to him and that he could teach them. And he loved the idea of turning me into, a celebrity, and that he was going to own. And even though I was already kind of too old to be, because 'cause that's why it didn't work out, it was my own person already too much. Um, but this he honestly believed, he was a sincere, what I call, he sincerely believed that Satan rules this earth. And I say it's like this. If you A lot of these people are very, very smart, very intelligent, and a lot of their emotional deprivation gets sort of stuffed with intellectual knowledge that, they have not had a regular emotional development, so that they have no real wisdom, they have no real insights, but they have a lot of knowledge. And in that knowledge, there is this question about what this earth is about. Because in this earth, um, what is this, our home? What this is a world of duality. And on the one hand, we're being drawn to matter. On the one hand, we're being drawn to, believe sort of this delusive nature of earth, which is that it gives them, it presents as substantial, but it really, we know from quantum dynamics, that it really isn't substantial, that our physical bodies are not substantial. We also leave our physical bodies. So then where do we go? Do we just disappear, or are we an individualized spark of something, consciousness, that is, are we then more than the body? So the Satanists say, well, we are here, and this is what we've got, and Satan rules this place. And so there is really, it is really, the indoctrination goes in, you do that, you get blackmailed through pedophilia, but you get rewarded with status and money and power. Now that's how it works. And that is, of course, how biblically Satan works. You get drawn in because every person has free will. And what was really important was that I would give my free will. And there's, in fact, you have to give it 5 times. And I gave it the first time because I had no idea what I was saying yes to, or what I was giving my free will to. But later on, I didn't anymore. And the free will means you give your will to Satan, or you give your will to a demon, an entity that you believe can come and help you with things on earth. You can get money, you can have power, you can have status. It's whatever you want. If you're very ambitious, and again, if you don't have a strong connection with who you are yourself, and you don't have a very strong sense of morality, of what is right and wrong from within, and you believe that morality only comes through dogmatic religion and it's just imposed on you. Now, if you believe that there's nothing on this earth, that because you yourself are not connected to spirit, and you yourself have no sense of self and no self-esteem, really, the only way for somebody who's been badly abused in childhood, who has no self-esteem, the only way to make yourself feel important is through some kind of power that replaces self-esteem. Power, status. It's the same in it's the same on every level. It can happen in every segment of society, but in that particular group, in these secret societies where it's about global power, they hog the money and resources, and it's a system that is well oiled and functioning to this day, that kind of enslaves everybody. And that is by this indoctrination, and which usually happens gradually. Then, like, if you're very ambitious and you're in a corporation, and then one day something happens and it's wrong, then the question is, like, it's wrong, so what do you do? So are you gonna say something and potentially lose your job and your standing and your position? Or are you gonna just be quiet and just think about your own benefit? Because in that group, you know that if you speak out against this when the boss is doing something to somebody and it's wrong, if you keep quiet, nothing's gonna happen to you. So that's like a very small example of this extreme version in Satanist culture, where you give yourself completely to the dark, over to the darkness, but you do get rewarded with physical, with money, with status. And of course, people do that with each other. And whether that Satan is an entity or not, that is almost beside the point. But you get more deeply and deeply complicit and caught. And then it's a matter of how far you go. How much do you need that power?